For your time tonight. We appreciate it.
Great being with you. Thank you.
So first of all, lots to talk to you about tonight, a few things. Let's first start with the events of this past week, and of course I'm referring to the discovery and the killing of Osama bin Laden in Pakistan. Sir, if you could recount for us where you were when you heard the news and what were your thoughts?
Well, Libby and I were up in the Adirondacks at our farm when the president made the announcement, and of course, like every New Yorker and every American, I couldn't help but feel a great sense of satisfaction that this mass murderer had been killed, and rightfully so. But whenever I think of September 11th, I also have mixed feelings because you can't help but have a sense of sadness for the killing of Osama. While rightfully done and showing American resolve, will never bring back the thousands of friends and neighbors and colleagues who died on September 11th. So I was proud of our country, proud of the fact that Osama had been brought to justice, but also it brought back those sad feelings of the people who lost loved ones and who would be having those same sense of loss as they heard this news.
And from what I understand, you received a call from Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, who, of course, at the time was Senator of New York while you were governor.
Yes, it was very gracious of Secretary Clinton to give me a call and just let me know what had happened so we could, because we had been through September 11th together, and I appreciated her call very much.
One of the things we learned later in the week, of course, there was reports that there were photos that were floating around of Osama bin Laden's body after he was killed, and of course the White House and the Obama administration struggling with the decision whether or not to release those photos, and ultimately they decided just a couple days ago that they would not. Do you think that was the right decision?
Well, first, I'm not going to criticize the president. He has access to intelligence that we don't, but I do think if you look at how people always have conspiracy theories and there are always doubters out there, that it would have been better to release the photos. And I know there's concerns about the reaction globally, but when we had Abu Ghraib and the prison in Iraq situation, that was on the front page of every newspaper, that was broadcast in every television station, and it was a tribute, really, to our open society and our willingness to expose our country, warts and all. It was a horrible thing done by criminals in the name of the U.S. while wearing our uniform, but we didn't hide it. So I would have, if facing that decision and with the intelligence I have today, I would have been inclined to release those photos.
Speaking of the president, from what I understand, you did receive an invitation to attend the ceremony down at Ground Zero.
Yes, I did.
Just yesterday.
Yes,
Unfortunately, you were out of town and weren't able to make it.
Yeah, I'm enjoying the private sector, and I was in Texas at the time when they made the call and couldn't get back, didn't get back really until last night.
As far as the World Trade Center site goes, so there's been a lot of criticism about the progress and the delay in things getting going down there. How do you think things are going right now, and do you think it was the right way to kind of go about it in a public manner the way we did as far as the design and for the buildings down there?
I am very proud of everything we did to get Ground Zero to where it is today. The public process was exactly the right thing to do. We threw out the very limited plan to rebuild office buildings that was proposed by the Port Authority, had a public process to engage people in picking a master site plan, had a public process with a jury that went through hundreds of proposed designs for the memorial, and at the end everything has turned out exactly as I had hoped. We have a brilliant master site plan. The centerpiece is the memorial as it had to be. A lot of people said rebuild the towers. Where those towers stood are going to be a memorial that will allow us to tell this story for future generations. People said you couldn't build tall again. Well, we're having the Freedom Tower rise at the rate of a floor a week, and it will go 1,776 feet high. That wouldn't have happened. None of that would have happened. But for the vision and the stick-to-itiveness of our team that made this happen. So I'm very proud, and we always knew that the first years were going to be the hardest because you had to get things approved, you had to arrange financing, you had to deal with 7 stories underground, under sea level of infrastructure before it could rise up, but I never doubted it was, and I'm very proud that it is.
Well, it's wonderful to see, and you mentioned the Freedom Tower, and it's funny, we've known it as the Freedom Tower, everybody's called it the Freedom Tower, but during the ceremony the other day, yesterday as a matter of fact, we're hearing it referred to as One World Trade Center.
You know, I don't understand it. It is the Freedom Tower. I think it's political correctness run amok that you can't use the word freedom. But in my view, to call it One World Trade Center is wrong. We had a One World Trade Center. It was the South Tower, and it was destroyed, and hundreds and hundreds of our neighbors and friends and colleagues and family were killed in that tower. So out of respect, and because it's the right thing to do, I think New Yorkers will always refer to it as the Freedom Tower. And by the way, it's going to be 1,776 feet tall. And I think that speaks for itself, that it is a tribute to our freedom.
You know, over the past few presidential election cycles, we've talked about your interest in the presidency. You've never fully said whether you're going to run or not, but there's been a lot of speculation that you might over the past few years, and you haven't. Where do you stand for 2012? I know you have a new debt group going now, but where's your focus going to be coming up?
First of all, I love the private sector. I've been in it over 4 years now. I'm with a great law firm, Chadbourne & Park, and I enjoy the people and I enjoy the work, and I'm just having a terrific time. But I've always been involved and care about public policy, whether it's the state or the federal level, and I do today. And I'm very concerned that in Washington, both parties, to be honest, are not focusing on solving the issues and the problems that we need to solve as a country to move forward. And you mentioned our group, our new debt, our public policy group, and it's called No American Debt, because the deficit and the debt are going to really limit the future of this country. And for the first time in the history of our country, we are stealing from future generations. We are stealing from our children to live beyond our means today. It's unsustainable, it's wrong, and it's got to stop. And our group, No American Debt, is going to focus on making this an important issue and holding the president and Republicans accountable for having real solutions to this issue.
Well, that's just in the president earlier last month coming out with his plan. But there was an interesting article in USA Today this morning that says the U.S. tax burden for everybody right now at its lowest since 1958. Do you think there's a chance, and of course nobody wants to raise taxes, but is it a combination of cuts in government spending and possibly an increase in taxes as well? How would you go about it?
Well, I think what we're seeing is an explosion in government spending and borrowing that has to be brought to an end. And we're still in a recession. Maybe the experts don't call it that, and the president doesn't call it that. But when people don't have jobs, when we're almost at 9% unemployment still, it is just wrong. And to raise taxes, particularly on small business people, is the wrong message. And we have seen a deficit reduction commission come out, a bipartisan commission. They proposed $4 trillion in reduction of the deficit. And the president walked away from it. He just ignored it. And then you saw Republicans come out with a more than $6 trillion proposal to reduce the deficit, and the president attacked it in a way that was completely wrong. We need him to sit down, and we need Harry Reid and Nancy Pelosi to sit down and look seriously at spending cuts, and including entitlements, so that we can stop this generational theft, stop this crime against our children, and as states do, as New York State did this year, balance its budget without raising taxes.
Well, of course, coming up, there's been a lot of talk about this vote on the country's debt ceiling. And, of course, Treasury Secretary Timothy Geithner saying we're going to reach that ceiling by the middle of this month. And we're going back and forth on a clean vote, a standalone vote on increasing that ceiling. Republicans saying that can't be done without attaching some further cuts to that vote.
I totally agree with the Republicans on this. We have a $1.65 trillion deficit this year. The president's own commission came up with $4 trillion in cuts. And is he telling us that he can't find $100 billion, $500 billion of those $4 trillion to begin taking action today? It doesn't get any better to just continue borrowing every single day. It doesn't get any better to drive up the interest costs that we're going to have to pay for programs that we can't afford today. So I agree that this is an opportunity to find some of those important savings that we should start enacting today and not wait until 2013.
One final question, sir. Your group, previous to No American Debt, focused on the president's reform of the health care system.
Right.
And, of course, a lot of that being folded now into this argument of government spending. And the House GOP's 2012 budget, their plan would cut taxes and end Medicare's traditional role as a fee-for-service payment system.
Well, first of all, I'm proud of what we did to elect a majority in the House that now has voted to repeal Obamacare. It is a bad law. And by the way, it's going to add hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars to the deficit over the course of the next decade. So part of what I believe we should do to reduce the deficit is to repeal Obamacare and put in place real health care reforms that would expand that coverage. I've seen in general terms the House proposal to cut $6.3 trillion, just as Obama's commissions to cut $4 trillion. There's much I agree with, some that I don't. But the important thing is that they put a plan on the table. They passed it in the House. The Senate has done nothing. The President has done nothing. You can't even score his proposal by the Congressional Budget Office. That is wrong. Instead of attacking what is out there, let's look for solutions in a bipartisan way. That's what America's always done, and that's what we need to do now.
Former Governor George Pataki. Sir, we thank you as always for your time. Go take care of that throat. Get rid of that cold.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry about it. I've had a cold for a while, but thank you for having me on.
No worries. Thanks again.